In this video, we will continue exploring and applying the 12 basic principles of animation to your acting. Now, in the previous videos, we discussed the first 8 principles of animation. If you missed those videos, you can follow the playlist link on your screen or down in the description below to find those. Now, in this video, we will continue with principles 9 through 12. So if you're ready, let's get set, and here we go! Hi diddly ho, I am Doug Fall. Thank you for watching today. Welcome to Augmented Actor, where we help you augment your acting career with tips, tactics, and tech. Principle number 9, timing. In animation, timing refers to the number of frames it takes for a given action to occur, and it translates into speed and weight. Personality and nature of animation is greatly affected by the number of frames inserted into the action. For example, if an object is animated with many frames between its starting and ending poses, it will appear to be heavy and slow. A lighter object will move a further distance and take fewer frames to animate, giving it the illusion of speed and weightlessness. Now, it's difficult to translate this into acting, but an actor can play around with how long it takes to move from one movement to the next. By moving swiftly from pose to pose, your character appears more frenetic, lighter, animated. By moving very slowly through a movement, your character feels very heavy, grounded, stiff, belabored. Try playing around with tempo and timing and mixing them up to give a movement routine some weight or a comic effect. Principle number 10, exaggeration. Each animation, pose, or expression can be taken to the next level to increase the amount of impact it will have on the audience. Animations that strive for perfect imitation of reality can look static and dull. The amount of exaggeration you use depends on whether you seek perfect realism or a particular style, like a caricature. It also depends on how far away your audience is from the action you are trying to portray. The further away the camera is from the action, or the further away the last row of seats in the theater are, that will dictate how much exaggeration you need to add to your performances. Now, you may think that adding exaggerations will make your performances less convincing. In many cases, it's the exact opposite. Walt Disney always asked his animators to strive for more realism, but when they delivered a realistic animation based on real-life physics and movements, he would say it doesn't look realistic. By adding exaggeration to the gestures and expressions, the animators supported the real-life physics in a way that made them appear more realistic. So exaggeration really just makes the idea or essence of the actions more real. In order to add exaggeration to your performances, just think of heightening each element. If a character is sad, make it really sad. If a character is stupid, make it more stupid. Exaggeration doesn't mean distorted. It means more convincing. You don't need to ham it up. You just need to raise the stakes. I'm sure you've heard that term before. Exaggeration is also very important to implement in your reactions to certain actions. If someone punches you on stage, you might try exaggerating your response to the punch to sell it and make it seem more powerful. In fact, an actor's response to a physical activity like that is what really sells that activity. So add in extra movements, bigger movements, or a longer recovery time to add exaggeration. It's super important to over-exaggerate your diction as well. Over-pronounce words and the endings of words, and use bright, distinct consonants. This helps clarify your performance and the words to the back of the house. Another thing you hear a lot in theater is you can't be too big or too loud. Directors often tell you to make it bigger, and then they can pull it back if they need to. So a rule of thumb for exaggeration is to practice going over the top. Be as big and bold as you can, especially when you're asked to, and let the director rein your performance back in. Sometimes we think we are being way exaggerated and it feels unnatural, but then when you watch a tape of yourself later, you realize you could have pushed it a lot further. Principle number 11, solid drawing. The principle of solid drawing means taking into account forms in three-dimensional space, or giving them volume and weight. The animator needs to be a skilled artist and has to have an understanding of the basics of three-dimensional shapes, anatomy, weight, and balance. One thing animators are taught to avoid is twinning, characters whose right and left sides mirror each other. This makes the characters look lifeless and robotic. For for an actor, we already come in three-dimensional space, right? So the idea of making ourselves appear more three-dimensional doesn't really translate too well. But we can certainly learn from the idea of avoiding twinning, meaning we should avoid doing the same gestures with both arms at the same time. So work on creating postures and poses that aren't synchronized. Don't stand in neutral poses with your arms at your sides or both hands in your pockets, but rather play with different ways of using your arms and legs. Play with slouching, leaning, limping, etc., to give your character more three-dimensional aspects and to portray weight and pain and nervousness in unique and interesting ways. Directors can also learn a lot about staging by making sure that their pictures and their settings include depth and that their lighting designs provide a three-dimensional image overall, rather than looking flat or all on the same plane. This is why directors often try to avoid staging actors so that they end up in a straight line, or that they try to achieve stage pictures where the actors are posed at different levels or different depths to give it a more interesting snapshot moment. All right, we're on to the last principle, principle number 12, appeal. Appeal in animation corresponds to what we would call charisma in an actor. The characters that an animator animates should have some sort of appealing aspect to like about them. Now, a character doesn't need to be good looking, more so it needs to look interesting. And they don't necessarily have to be the hero to be sympathetic or to have appeal. In fact, villains and monsters each need a level of appeal. Now, tricks that animators use to give appeal are to try to give each character a unique, dynamic design. They try to avoid using the same overall shape for each character. So some characters are shaped like triangles, others like ovals, some are like squares. They also play with proportions by magnifying the traits and physical characteristics that most define the character. Bigger eyes, long, lanky legs and arms, things like that. The other rule of thumb is to keep the characters simple. Too much detail can muddy up the appeal of the character and make them more difficult to animate. Now, in the world of an actor, you might have limited control over the appeal of your character. Certainly, casting directors look for appeal when they are casting, and they're also looking for interesting types as well. And costume designers strive to accentuate interesting physical characteristics of an actor or a character when they create silhouettes in their designs. As actors, you can work on digging into a character and discovering the traits that most make your character appealing or interesting to an audience, and work on focusing on those traits and minimizing the rest. This can include magnifying certain postures, or using makeup to draw attention to certain facial features. Also, knowing which words to punch out in your dialogue and which words to gloss over when you're speaking. Using different voices and volume levels can make certain secondary characters and villains more interesting as well. Work on the ability to express your thoughts through your actions and your facial expressions so that they can be read by an audience. That will boost your character's appeal. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.